Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So today we're taking a look at the unofficial patch notes. So if you haven't seen already, the patch notes were apparently leaked in Korean, and there's some interesting stuff here. So let's take a look at it. Now, some of this stuff might be subject to change, possibly, but I really don't think that this is going to change between now and when the update ships next week. If you haven't already heard, as we can see here, the patch was originally scheduled for today, the 4th of January, but there was a bug found at the last minute, so they had to push it to probably sometime next week. So let's take a look at the information we have here, and I will give you some thoughts on it, because I definitely have some. So, standard stuff here, new feature, artist credits. You can now view the illustrator's information by clicking on the variant name above the card in the collection. That's great. People have been asking this for a long time. Really nice that they're doing it. General update stuff, automatically filter your favorite variants when editing your deck in the collection view. Now, if the section where multiple cards trigger each other is too long, the time it takes to finish the loop automatically increases. Okay, neat. So that was an issue with multiple cards getting kind of hung up on stuff. So hopefully we see a bit less of that. Fix the Orca issue added to Series 4. So Orca was one of the cards being added to Series 4 when that dropped. However, many people noticed the card wasn't actually showing up. Not really sure what the issue was with Orca, but it just wasn't really live in the game. And looks like that is changing with the next patch. Support for the Russian language. For new players who want to get started right away, we are releasing a Pro Bundle available for one-time purchase only. Includes 12,500 credits plus boosters to upgrade 8 common cards to Infinity. So we do not know the price about this. I imagine this might be a bit like the Welcome Bundle since they specify the one-time purchase. Maybe that's just a thing in translation though. I'm hoping this is on the cheaper side, but it is a lot of credits, so we'll have to wait and see. It does say 8 common cards to Infinity. I wonder if that's going to be specific cards or if they actually mean whatever it'll roll randomly on cards you have of common rarity. So we'll have to wait and see for the official patch notes on that, but good to be aware of because that is a lot of credits. We'll just have to wait and see on the price point. This one is one I want to talk about. So now the number of collector's tokens received by collecting all Series 3 cards with collector's reserves essentially the payout's going to be different. Before, you would get either 100 or 400. When you were getting 400, that was basically replacing a Series 3 card because you have no Series 3 cards to open currently. Once you have finished Pool 3, that'll change with time as cards rotate down. But for the time being, you were getting 400 credits, or not credits, 400 collector tokens instead of getting a Series 3 card once you finish the pool. But now they're changing that. It will now be in a range of 200 to 600. However, the token acquisition rate remains the same. So this isn't a change to the amount of tokens we're getting. We're not getting necessarily more or less tokens, but the amount we're going to get is no longer just going to be a flat 400 when we're supposed to get the card. I think this is really stupid. So this kind of touches on a thing with Snap that I have a pretty big problem with, and it's RNG. Snap uses way too much RNG and it uses it in a very feels bad way, and this is a great example of it. Instead of having something that's nice and consistent, they're throwing RNG when it's entirely not needed for the sake of making people feel these highs and lows of getting a bigger number, when in actuality it's fabricated, it's fake, it's not actually changing. You're not actually getting luckier by getting a 600 pull because you're going to get a 200 one to make up for it. So that just rubs me the wrong way. And it's funny because, you know, there's a lot of RNG in Marvel Snap in terms of the gameplay, but that's actually not the RNG I have a problem with at all. I think the gameplay itself actually manages RNG in a very impressive and enjoyable way. It's the RNG over every other part of the game, such as when you acquire cards, what shows up in your collector's shop, all that kind of stuff. And now this with the tokens that I think is just absolute nonsense. And really just casts kind of a ugly shadow on what is otherwise a really enjoyable and fun game. I'm probably going to do a video talking about that in the future because this is something I've thought about for a while now, and I wanted to kind of dissect, RNG is not an inherently good or bad thing, but I think there are some ways that the game uses it that produce way more negatives than they do positives. But I'm not going to go super in detail on that right now, but those are just some initial thoughts. I think this is stupid. I don't think they should do it. They're probably going to do it anyway. Let's continue to the stuff people actually are interested in, though, which is balance updates, audio and visual stuff too. So added sounds for Asgard Daily Bugle, added new sounds for Arrow and Polaris, and added a visual effect for Arrow. So that's cool. Excited to see that. But balance updates, this is really what we want to see, right? So a lot of changes here that I was pretty much expecting, a few that I wasn't. First up, Arrow goes from a 5 cost 8 power to a 5 cost 7 power. Developer comments, Arrow's effectiveness is great for both obstruction and control. Previously, we increased the Arrow's stats to where it is now, but since players have realized how to use it, we thought it might be a good idea to lower the power a bit. Also, these are rough translations, so if some stuff doesn't make total sense, that's probably why. This is reasonable. Arrow is still a really good card at 7. It was initially buffed from 6 to 8. Now they're lowering it to 7, kind of like Destroyer. Card is still really good. A lot of the times you're playing it for the effect and not necessarily stats, and losing 1 power I do not think is going to significantly hurt this card. It's still very playable, still very good. Fine change. Galactus going from a 6-3 to a 6-2. Developer comments, even at the highest ranked play, decks using Galactus have huge cube gains and win rates. Some decks don't explicitly announce that Galactus will be coming, and there are plenty of support cards that some decks find difficult to counter. We're going to lower Galactus's power by 1 and then evaluate if further changes are needed. So, I'm surprised that they actually did this, and ironically, I think this might actually sometimes be a buff for Galactus, because the Galactus deck doesn't really want priority on the final turn a lot of the time, I find. So losing a stat isn't going to do very much, in my opinion. I don't think Galactus is an overpowered card. I don't think Galactus even necessarily needed this nerf. But I think what we're seeing with Galactus is, I think this card has potential to be more problematic at lower levels of play, where people don't see it coming, aren't aware of the counters, or just aren't interested in trying to build their deck in a way where they have to counter Galactus. I think at high levels of play, this card is really kind of mediocre a lot of the time. Personally, I'm not a fan of the card. I think the animation is cool, but I think the gameplay is absolutely the most boring thing in Marvel Snap when Galactus is involved, because it removes all of the thought of playing for multiple lanes, and I just don't really like that. But obviously, everyone's going to feel a little bit differently about the card. I don't think this change does anything significant to it. So we'll just have to wait and see, if this gets changed further in the future. I think at high levels of play, it is not really a problem in my experience. And from what I've seen from other creators and whatnot, and other players who I respect, and who I think are of like a higher level of play. But this is definitely one of those cards where I could see it creating enough feel bad moments for players at like the mid to lower level that that's why they're changing it, because end of the day, those are probably the majority of the player base. So not that surprised to see this. I don't think it's really going to do anything. So we'll see if they leave it alone at 6-2 or if they make some other change in the future. All right, here's the one everyone's been waiting for. Leader going from a 6-4 to a 6-3. Many players are picky about Leader's effectiveness. The ability to stop the game and make it difficult to play other 6-cost cards has often been a mixed bag. We're going to lower the power a bit and see if further modifications are needed later. This is pretty much what I expected them to do. I said in the original video where I talked about Leader nerfs, it's going to go to a 6-3 or a 6-2. They're taking the lighter-handed approach, putting it to 6-3 for now. Maybe if it is still a problem, they will make it lower eventually. So what do I think about this? I think, for one, it's not going to really satisfy the majority of the people who are upset about Leader. I do think it is a bigger nerf than a lot of people are seeing on the surface. There are a lot of times where that 1 point in power, it makes a significant difference. I have honestly lost count of the amount of times I have lost to Leader by exactly 1 point. So I do think that while it looks very small on the surface, it is actually going to be a lot more impactful than people are expecting. But is it going to be enough to really calm down the insane usage of leader? I don't think so, but it's possible. Regardless, I don't necessarily mind an approach like this where they are, taking lighter changes and then revisiting if it's still a problem. Personally, I think the best thing they could do to leader, because I do think leader he serves a legitimate purpose in the game. The problem is, I think he's just countering more stuff than he was originally intending to counter, and he's just very, very free to throw in as the 6-cost top end to a deck, which just isn't really good for the game, I think, when every deck can just jam in leader and become better. So what I personally think is, I think the nerf is fine, putting it to 3. I think the big thing that would really eliminate a lot of the feels bad of leader, though, is leader should not copy buffed stats on cards. Leader should give you a copy of the original card they are playing. It would really make him not as punishing when you have priority and the opponent wins with a leader, because they got, let's say, your Gamora, who got buffed, they get your buffed Gamora, and then they get the effect again, where they get all your Surfer cards buffed by the Surfer, and then they get the Surfer buff again. I think that's a little ridiculous, and I think that's a big part of why the card has so much play right now. Not because it just counters these turn 6 strategies like it's kind of designed to, but it's doing so in a way that's just way more effective than I think it was ever meant to be. Especially given the kind of where the metagame is kind of trending towards, with a lot of decks trying to do a big thing on turn 6. So I think this will make leader worse. Is it enough to where people will be happy about it? I'm not entirely sure. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But I think at the very least, something they should consider is not copying stat buffs, as I think it makes what is a somewhat reasonable card just ridiculously over the top and too good. Then the next one, this one rubs me the wrong way. This change I do not like. Nova going from a 1-cost 2 power to a 1-cost 1 power. Nova's effect is much stronger than 1-cost cards, so we didn't think it was appropriate for Nova to have the average stats of a 1-cost card. This is, in my opinion, kind of bullshit. I think it's kind of silly that they're nerfing Nova. Nova's not an overpowered card. I think it was actually fine where it was. This change doesn't really make Nova a lot worse. In fact, the worst, place for this change is actually going to be in the Venom decks, because you're not going to get an additional power. It's pretty minor. Nova's still going to see a lot of play. Nova's still a good card. I don't understand why they felt the need to change it. How many times is the 1 power on Nova actually making a difference? I would say it probably isn't. Most of the times that the power is making a difference is for power that comes from Nova, and when he gets destroyed. So I don't really understand this change. I think it's entirely unnecessary. It doesn't even significantly, like if they were trying to tone down the Death Wave deck or something, or the Destroy deck, it doesn't really do that. So I don't understand why they made this change. It feels random, it feels kind of pointless, and I don't really like it. Then we have buffs. So there were buffs this time around. That's nice. Drax. So basically, Drax is now going to be a 4/5, but only gains 3 power if your opponent has played a card here. And then the same thing is happening to Groot. Groot is a 3/4, and if your opponent plays a card here, it gets +2 power instead of +3. So, developer comments here, while you may think that the Guardian's effect will create a lot of fun, it also feels like an all-or-nothing game. We hope to increase Drax and Groot's base stats to lower the risk of playing cards and increase their attractiveness in the 3 and 4 cost slots. This is good. It definitely did feel all or nothing. It's why Drax and Groot did not really see very much play. And maybe this will help a little bit. So I don't really mind seeing this, but I don't know if it's necessarily going to make the cards a lot more popular, but you'll probably see more Drax in the Zabu stuff. Hazmat going from a 2/1 to a 2/2. We know that there are some powerful looking Hazmat combo decks, but Hazmat's overall performance is not good, so in this update we want to raise it slightly. That's fine. I think it's fine. I don't know if that significantly impacts Hazmat combo decks very much. I imagine it doesn't, but hey, if it's underperforming, I don't mind seeing a buff for it. Black Cat going from a 3/6 to a 3/7. Since Black Cat is rarely used, we want to increase its attractiveness by increasing its power. This is good. Black Cat was really kind of unplayable at a 3.6, and I think it gets a bit more reasonable at a 3.7. Would it be enough for the card to see significant play? I don't know, but I'm excited to experiment with it and see if the power bump makes it a bit more value. And then Nakia going from a 3.1 to a 3.2. We think Nakia's effect is an interesting mechanic, but it currently has very low success rate. We want to buff it up a bit to make it more attractive of an option. Nakia was really busted in the beta. They nerfed it. She really hasn't seen much play since she's gotten nerfed, so it's nice that they're trying to make the card a bit more appealing. Maybe people will give her a spin in the Surfer decks or something now, who knows. But I don't necessarily expect this buff to make Nakia that much more popular of a card, but you never know. And then there are just some smaller stuff here. Zone updates now. If there's a Professor X in Oscorp Tower, card will not swap to the other side. Updated text for the Raft and Vibranium Mine to be more clear, and decrease the chance of Warrior Falls appearing. I guess it appeared more than intended. There are also a bunch of bug fixes, a lot of stuff here though, so I will just have a link in the description where you can read through this all yourself, because it's a lot of stuff, don't want to read through it all, but just some good bugs fixes. But those are the patch notes. So overall, thoughts on all this? I think generally most of these card updates are good. I strongly disagree with the Nova one, even though I don't think it's actually going to be a big deal for the game, just kind of on principle. I think it's silly to change a card like this for little reason when the card isn't really overpowered or even overplayed. I really don't think Nova is that overplayed, but that's just my thought on that. The other changes all seem pretty good. I think a lot of people are not going to be happy with the leader change. I'm interested to see how things play with him at 3 power, as I do think it'll make a difference. But I would not be surprised if it's a card they touch again in the future. And again, I really don't think it should copy those bonus stats on the card it's copying. I think that would solve a lot of issues with the card. Galactus, we'll see if they change it again, but kind of surprised about that one. And then Arrow, still going to be really good, really popular. Just pretty decent changes overall, barring that Nova one, in my opinion. I'm excited to try this stuff out when it hits, hopefully next week. But I can't stress enough, though, the collector's token thing is really ridiculous, and I do think this is one of those things that, I mean, who knows if we can have any impact, but I do think this is something that the community should kind of try and draw a line in the sand on, because unlike, what some people seem to think here at Second Dinner, RNG is not an inherently positive experience, and I really dislike the notion of them adding it in such a fabricated, fake way to create these artificial highs and lows when the actual resources we're getting aren't actually changing. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and that's going to wrap it up for this video. So if you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.